One of the things that I get asked a lot by other therapists that I'm supporting or consulting with or training is what do I do when the client comes in and they don't have anything to focus on? And I have like a sort of like a funny little thought on this, which is that there's nothing harder for a therapist than a client without a problem. Now, this is not because we want our clients to have problems, but it's because this is how therapists know how to have utility. Most clients come into session because of a pain point. They start their work with you because there's some sort of a pain point or an issue, a challenge in their lives that they're looking to resolve. Sometimes clients will come into therapy just for the purposes of self growth, just for the purposes of exploration. But given how sort of limited people's time and energy is, I typically see that they will enter into therapy because they have some kind of a driving problem that they really want to resolve or to no longer experience that challenge anymore. So, when a client comes in and they have those challenges, we know what to work on, and we also know kind of what the therapeutic goals are or what the focus of the sessions are. Now, I do other videos about how to stay focused on those issues, how to help the client actually resolve them versus kind of switching every week to different topics, but that's for other videos. Today, it's on the topic of if the client doesn't have a problem to solve for whatever reason, then what are you going to do with them and how to react or what steps to take? So here's the different scenarios that can happen. One is that the client, you might have been working with them for a little while. Perhaps you've been doing good work with them, and there's some kind of temporary reprieve of the problem. So let's say, for example, the client typically argues with their college age child when the college age child comes home for the summer. And that's what you've been focusing on in therapy. But now that the college age child went back to college, perhaps the problem has almost kind of naturally softened or changed. And so now there might be an absence of that challenge or that problem in session, right? The second type of scenario is that the interventions that you did with the client, the insights that you guys developed, the problem solving techniques that you came up with, the coping skills that they were using, that actually is why the problem resolved. It wasn't just because the college age child went back to college, it's because you and the client discussed the issue of what was happening with their child at home, and you came up with solutions or interventions that were effective, and now the problem has eliminated itself or been resolved by your interventions, which is wonderful, right? So both of these scenarios are great. Either the problem sort of softened on its own, or because of the interventions that you use, the problem has changed or been eliminated. This is something to celebrate, right? So we want to first and foremost celebrate with our clients and call great attention to and acknowledge that it was their choices, their interventions, the things that they did, the courage that they had to solve the problem that has led to the resolution of the issue that they had. And this is a moment to pause and to celebrate, right? And then from there, after you and the client have acknowledged them and taken stock, there might be sort of a space here like, well, what the heck are we doing together, or what are we doing with our time? And so now we have two options that I'm going to offer as ways to now take the next step when the client has no longer any presenting issue about what you should do. Right. So, on one hand, one thing that we can do is we can remember back to when the client had started with therapy with us and think of all of the presenting issues that they had mentioned at the time. Very often, clients have more than one presenting issue or pain points or things that they would like to resolve or change. And so now, because you're the therapist that takes great notes, that has an excellent memory, that takes great notes, especially if you don't have a great memory, this is where you might be pulling on remembering the other things that the client presented. You might be saying, wow, great job with all those interventions that you used in order to be able to change what was happening with this problem. How do you feel about having resolved it? That's really wonderful. And, so what would you like to spend our time on now? What should we focus on? And if the client doesn't have sort of an automatic on the ready idea, then one of the things that you can do is to remember back to when they first started therapy with you and say, well, I remember that when we first started together, there were about 3 or 4 issues that you presented at once. One of them was this, which you've resolved. Would you like to put focus on the other ones and do some work on those things now? And so it's giving us an opportunity to be able to kind of go back to other things that the client has presented in session and target those. And very often the clients will be really glad to do that. The other thing that we can do is to say, therapy is a great place to solve problems, and you just did such a wonderful job solving those problems that you had recently. We were recently working on. um, but in the absence of crisis and problems, which is a wonderful state to be in, because it is a now the opportunity to be able to put focus on growth and thriving. So crisis and chaos and problems, they take up a lot of time, energy, money, focus. When those things have softened, died down, or been resolved, we now have space. And that space is ideal for thriving and for growth. And sometimes clients are not accustomed to thinking about therapy being a place that they're growing or they're achieving goals. They might only think of therapy as a place to solve problems. As a matter of fact, you might even think about how a lot of clients start session. They'll say, like, oh, yeah, let me think about what happened this week and what the problems were. In other words, they identify therapy as the place just to resolve problems. So, what I'm suggesting to you, and this might also be because I'm also a certified life coach, and I have, because I think it's a great skill set that I added into my therapy practice about 20 years ago. And it's also why I also teach life coaching in the advanced holistic counseling and coaching certification, as well as all of the other holistic modalities and the best psychotherapy techniques, because um, when there's an absence of crises or problems, this is the moment to invite the client into thinking about thriving and growth. Explain to them that when we don't have a crisis or a challenge to be focusing on, now we have all this space and energy to be able to sort of create the things that they want, to be able to identify, clarify, and go after what it is that they really want that would make them feel really amazing in the other parts of their lives. And so this is where you're going to spend some time with them, asking them, what are the areas in your life that you would like to thrive more? What are some of the aspects of your life that may be good, but you want to bring them to great? And let's see if we can flesh that out together. Now, in my practice, we have like some very specific assessments that we use for helping people to identify the areas that they would really like to grow or to thrive more. And I do also teach those in the advanced holistic counseling and coaching certification course. And that's not something we'll go over right now, but I want to help you conceptualize the idea that even if you don't have those assessments, that this is the moment to present the idea of thriving and growth to the client, which case you will then be starting to create like a list of what those goals are. And they might say things like, well, I, for some reason over the last year, I packed on 20 pounds. I would really like to resolve that. I'm starting to get pretty bored at my job, so it might be a good time for me to start thinking about what my next career step is going to be. It might be, my husband and I are in the house that we're in now, but we would really like to upgrade. That's something that I would like to see change in my life. And now those areas, even though they may not be pain points, these are areas of growth and thriving that you as a therapist can focus on and make yourself of great value to them. Because there are how many folks or how many people or services in their lives are going to be focusing on helping them to grow. You're in an ideal position to be able to do that as their therapist. You know the questions to ask, you know the ways to help motivate them, you know the ways to resolve barriers. And so this is a perfect spot for the therapist to be working in the absence of those other glaring problems. So I hope you'll consider trying to use some of those techniques in when your client has an absence of problems. Celebrate the fact that the problem has been resolved, and then help them shift their attention to other issues that they originally presented that they may have forgotten about, and or also ask about thriving and growth, and find out what areas of their lives they would really like to next level their success in, so that you can be a huge part of that process with them. Have an awesome day and send me any questions. I would love to help you answer them.